Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni moli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jadley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you are joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Amy Pixton. She is the creator of the Indestructibles. I can't wait for you to find out what we're talking about. Hey, Amy, welcome to the Reading with Your Kids podcast.
Hey, Jed, thank you so much.
So what is an indestructible?
You know, that's a great question. It's actually an invented word by one of the editors at Workman. And Indestructibles are a little bit different than board books. So they're printed on Tyvek. And Tyvek is a material, you might recognize it. They used to put it, like FedEx envelopes are printed on Tyvek. So when it goes to the mail, it's not going to rip or tear. And it's also weather resistant. So babies, one of the ways that they naturally explore is with their mouth. And the same is with books. So they put everything in their mouth. And I had this experience with my kids. So they're 17 now, but when they were babies, I had triplets. And they put everything in their mouth, including their books. And so when I heard about Tyvek, this material, I thought, oh my gosh, I need a book out of that. My son was, he was like such a everything in his mouth kind of kid that I actually pulled cardboard from a board book out of his mouth. I thought he was going to choke. And I just packed up all the books and put them in the closet because I was like, you're not ready for this.
And especially with triplets, I imagine that would be like, the old circus performer spinning plates, trying to make sure the board books don't get into one of your kids' mouths. You're going to miss. And, there's going to be a page or two eaten.
Jed, that is like the perfect analogy. That's how I felt. I was constantly spinning plates. I was like, my eyes were in three places, but I was nowhere. I was all over the place, but I was nowhere, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And we always talk, one of the ways we talk about kids experiencing media is we talk about them consuming media. And that's an important concept for us to have, because kids they're feeding their brains with whatever they're watching on their devices or whatever they're reading. And we want kids to consume great literature and develop a great love of reading. But we don't necessarily want them to actually consume the cardboard that the stories are printed on. So what a fabulous idea. Now, was the idea for the Indestructible books, is this your idea?
Yeah, this was my idea. My mother-in-law, she's an artist. And at the time, she was in the schools and she was making murals on Tyvek. And so she was telling me about these murals that she was making. She had mentioned that so she lived in Oregon and she still does, and it rains a lot and the murals were outside. So it didn't matter if they got rained on. And so just kind of with the combination of hearing that and what my kids were doing with their mouths and books, put that all together. And I thought, well, why don't we just make some books, on Tyvek, and she actually created them. I still have them. My mother-in-law created them a little book on Tyvek, and it was sewn, and she collaged the pieces together. And she's the illustrator for the first 6 books in the series.
Wow! So, how did a mom of triplets spinning plates out there in Kansas get together with her very creative mother-in-law who's an art teacher and actually go from this cute little thing that we create for the triplets to creating a series of books that are being published. And I think that I saw there's 7 million in print or something like that.
Yeah. So I honestly, Jed, I hadn't heard that. Like, the number keeps changing constantly. I remember when we celebrated, 1 million books, and it took a long time to get to the million mark. But once that happened, it seems like now it's just, almost every year we're just selling lots of books, so, it was a long process, and there was a lot of perseverance, and it was a big learning curve for me. So, I am a social worker. I'm not in the book industry, but I worked as a parent educator. So, but this is after the series of Indestructibles were created. I worked as a parent educator, but all the information that I learned about early reading and early literacy while we were developing the Indestructibles series, I was able to use that in my work. And so it's been really intertwined, and it's been really, really wonderful. It's interesting. People will talk to you and they'll give you a lot of information. You'd be surprised. I saw the LeapPad learning books at the time, and they were made on Tyvek. And so I called them up and I talked to them, and I got information from them. And of course, it was a different kind of book and a different thing. They had like a big spiral bind. It wasn't a spiral binding. It was spiral, but it was a plastic binding around the edge, and you put it into a learning pad, and you could use a pen with it. So, I saw that product, and I was just able to kind of put together something that I felt like would be good with kids, just with a lot of research. That's why the books are all stitched. They're all sewn, just to make it so it's easy to open and close, and so that kids with little hands can turn those pages. So there was just like a lot of trial and error that went into developing it, and a lot of mistakes. But the thing is that I just kept pressing forward, and doors kept opening.
Mm-hmm. That's really, really cool. Now, the books are truly indestructible. The kids can chew on them. They can take them into the bathtub with them, and there's no problem?
Yeah, there's no problem. So, a baby is not going to rip them. If you take a big, strong person, you might be able to rip it. But it takes a lot to rip it. A baby is not going to be able to rip this book. And I tested them out. So I threw them in my washer. I washed one book probably 15 times between my washer and my dishwasher, probably even more than that. And it just you just wipe it off, But I recommend, I think the best thing is just to spray it down and wipe it off. Yeah. So, doesn't matter if you get it wet.
That is so really, really cool. Now, I'm familiar with the material Tyvek because I see it being used as insulation. Easy for me to say. Insulation on homes here in the Northeast. So if this material is strong enough to help, keep a house warm and toasty, I can't imagine a little one being able to tear it apart.
Yeah, and there's different kinds and grades of Tyvek, so it's not the same thing that goes on the house wrap, but it's the similar material.
Mm-hmm. Now, somebody out there may be thinking, and we've talked a little bit about this, and I go back. I heard John Grisham on his podcast kind of poo-pooing authors of children's books. He said, I read 26 books this weekend. They were all 12 pages. Who writes these things? Well, it's actually, there's an art and a skill to writing a children's book. And many, many authors have come on who've written novels for adults and written children's picture books, and they've said it is so much harder telling a whole story with 600 words as opposed to 30 or 40, 50,000 words in a novel. When you're writing a board book for that audience, for that really teeny audience, it's even fewer words and even more difficult. How did you find that process of writing those books in with just such an economy of words?
So the very first Indestructibles, they actually had no words at all. And the thing that I feel like is amazing about that is because it was in any language. There was no translation needed. It was in every language on the planet. So, so one of the first Indestructibles was Wiggle March, and it was on a farm. And so, I think if you naturally pick up a book and moms are like, they see a sheep and what do you say? You're going to be like, ah. So it was just that conversational piece that you were having with your baby. And that's how I read a lot with my kids. And so that's why there were no words. And so for the age group that Indestructibles are made for, they're just with fewer no words. So like, if you're happy and you know it, most of us know that tune, that song. And so it's like interactive. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands, and then, your baby's going to clap and you're clapping with your baby. And so it's that interactive piece. So, the series, they're all with, very few or no words, and it's so that you could talk about the pictures. And even the one, when they have words or those songs that we recognize and we know, there's just so much more that you can put into it. Like this little piggy going to the market, like there's the pictures at the market. And then you could be like, oh, what do you want? Look at the zucchini. Do you like zucchini? It's meant to be more than just the word on the page. It's meant to be a conversation with baby.
Now, as a social worker, I've said this, and I have a background in social work, but it's probably I was a social worker before you were born. And so things change and knowledge changes. But I believe that the conversations, those important conversations that I had to have with my kids when they were 14, 15, 16, when they were in their 20s and getting ready to get married, those conversations I felt started when they were babies sitting on my lap. Obviously, I wasn't talking to drugs and saying no to drugs with my 1-year-old, but I was talking to my kids about making choices, like you were talking about. Do you like zucchini? Should we put it in the salad? Should we have it for dinner? Talking about those choices. Am I right about that? Have I been feeding my...
Jed, you are 100% absolutely right. So you're building that attachment and that connection when they're young. I felt like I loved reading with the triplets because that was one of the times where you got lots of snuggles, you got lots of hugs. Everybody wasn't running around, the house, and they would be sitting on my lap. We would be looking at a book together, very engaged, and then you're going from those conversations of like, do you like tomatoes? And then as they get older, just like you said, you're talking about harder things, but you've already started that. You know what that looks like. You know what that feels like. They know what that looks like, and they know what that feels like. And so then when kids get older and they transition into those harder things, you have that connection. You have that bond, and you're able. I feel like, we say, you're just reading, and we feel like they're learning vocabulary, and they are. They're, babies are learning so much when you're reading with them, but there's also that attachment piece that's very, very important.
Yeah, so very important. And I truly believe, and I know we've talked a lot about, kids who are read to 20 minutes a day, every day. When they enter kindergarten or preschool, they have already heard 800,000 more words than their peers who haven't been read to every day. And that's an incredible advantage. But I truly, truly believe that the biggest benefit of reading with our kids is that bond, is that statement that you're making to your kids saying, your kids know that you're busy. Your kids know that you have other responsibilities, but you are every day taking time to put the world down. And then that the most important person in that child's world, the child sees that they're putting everything down so they can spend time with them every night. And it's important, and that lets the kid know that he or she is important. And that's a beautiful, beautiful gift that we give to our kids.
And I know Indestructibles are for the little ones, but I would say don't stop when they get older. Just keep reading with them, and you might read aloud to them. They might read aloud to you. I love Indestructibles because I feel like they're made for the youngest readers, and kids grow and develop, and then you're forming those attachments and bondings and habits, and you're developing them, and you just going on to different growing stages, like with, the chapter books and, all those things.
Yeah. Yeah. So very important. Hey, what does it feel like? I know that you were kind of surprised when I mentioned the number 7 million. You hadn't heard that particular number. But what is it? We have a lot of authors who listen to the show, and, here you are, a mom in Kansas, juggling plates, juggling the triplets, and now you are a person who created something, and there've been 7 million of the things that you created sold in the world. What does that feel like?
Honestly, it feels amazing. When I went to Workman Publishing for the first time, I actually was able to meet with Peter Workman, and shout out to Workman Publishing. They are like the most amazing publisher ever. So I walked in, and their offices on Barrack Street. It's absolutely amazing. And there's this shelf, and it said 1 million copies sold. And it had like their books, ones that you would probably recognize are like What to Expect When You're Expecting, and some Sandra Boynton books, and, all on this 1 million books sold shelf. And I was like, I want to be there. I want these books on that shelf. And I actually have a picture of me, standing in front of this shelf. And when 1 million copies were sold, and went back to the offices and stood in front of that shelf. This is something in my life that, I never imagined happening. It's not something like I set out one day and said, "Oh, I'm gonna, start a series of books for babies." It just you just never know how life is going to go. So for me, it's like, it's amazing. I like, when I stop and think about it, it just makes me smile. And I'm, Jed, I'm a religious person. And so I feel like the hand of the Lord was in this. So, I mean, that's another thing for me. And everybody can call it what they want, but for me, that's what I call it. And I can see God's hand in this. And, so it just makes me smile, and it makes me very thankful to my Father in heaven for helping guide me in this.
And that must be even more important for you to think and sit back and to think, not only did, there's 7 million of these things that have been sold, but I've been a part of millions of smiles.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? Parents will email or reach out, or sometimes they reach out to Workman, and they'll send pictures, and they'll, my baby loves this book. And like, yeah, it just makes me so happy, to think that, or just I'll randomly be out and I'll see some mom whip one out of their diaper bag for their baby. It's just like, whoa.
And it's I think it's such a healthier thing to whip out of the diaper bag than handing the kid your phone and letting them watch a cartoon. Because and I really believe, when you're handing your baby a video, a cartoon, they're just going to be hypnotized by it. But when you're handing them an Indestructible, a book with pictures on it that they can manipulate themselves, that they actually have to use their imagination with, that they're remembering, oh, I'm looking through this. We did this last night with Mom, and I remember she sang this song, and it's just so much of a healthier experience for the kids, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. It's funny you mentioned, like, I sang this song with Mom last night. It's not an Indestructible, but one of my kids' favorite books when they were little was a Sandra Boynton board book, Snuggle Puppy. And we just had the book out the other day, and my daughter just started singing it, and it just was so fun. Like, we still know every single word to that book, and we sing it with that song. And I hope Indestructibles are like that for babies and moms as well as just like that book was for my family and with my children.
Yeah. And one of the things, and this just occurred to me, and one of the conversations I had with my beautiful wife, who just retired after serving as a special needs teacher in Boston for over 34 years. I was having a conversation with her and her best friend, who at the time was a principal. And I said, well, how can the podcast motivate parents, city kids, parents that you're serving, to read more with their kids? And they both came at the same time, said, a lot of our parents can't read, or they can't read English. I think the Indestructibles, if there's somebody like that in our lives, a parent that we think maybe they're not able to read, what a beautiful gift this would be, because we've talked about how much fun taking a picture book and covering the words before you read it for the first time, and just taking a picture walk through the book with your kids and talking about the pictures and thinking, what could the story be about? That's something with the Indestructibles. That's something that anybody can do. Take a picture walk through the book with their kids, and know if they can read, if they can't read, if they can read English or not. But then this sounds like a book that as a parent is reading an Indestructible with their kids, and maybe there's 15 or 20 words in a book. Well, they can start learning how to read those 15 or 20 words. And maybe as a parent is helping a child develop a love of reading, the parent who didn't learn how to read before they became a parent starts learning how to read. What a beautiful gift that would be.
Yeah, so I know of libraries that have actually in maybe like a lower income area, low literacy rates, where they have specifically given these books out to parents so for that reason. And one of the earlier books was Flip Flop Pond that my mother-in-law Karen illustrated, and there's a frog on every page. And so, you can just follow the frog and talk about the frog, and you don't have to know how to read to have that conversation. And even with the books with words, the few and small words, you can make up your story. You can be creative. The story can be different every day. It could be the same. It's just what you come up with,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What a beautiful gift that you've given to so many families. And I really want to thank you. And I thank those triplets that was making you crazy and eating those books that inspired you to come up with this great idea.
Yeah, they're doing college essays right now. And I told them, I was like, because, they have all these questions. Well, what have you done? And I was like, well, you inspired a whole book series. And they're like, no, Mom. We're not going to write an essay on that.
All right, parents, Amy gave their kids absolutely the best advice, because every single kid out there is writing an essay about, well, I was like the lead in my school musical. And, I've heard from so many different, people in the college process. It's, admissions officers, they have 12 minutes to look at an application and go on to the next. You need to really stand out. If Amy's Triplets wrote about them being the inspiration for Indestructibles, a series that has sold over 7 million copies, that is going to capture an admissions officer attention.
I think so. And all they had to do was be born, okay? And do baby things, right?
Hey, it's too bad your kids couldn't submit their applications on Tyvek as an Indestructible.
They should.
Well, before we get into too much silliness, Amy, tell everybody where they can go to find out more about the Indestructibles and find out more about you.
So you can go to workman.com or you can type in indestructiblesinc.com, and there's a website that has question and answer information. There's a little bit about me. There might even be a picture of the triplets and I can't remember if it's just me or the triplets and myself. If there's not, I'll tell them to put one up. And you know what? You can buy Indestructibles anywhere books are sold. Mm-hmm. Online, or I have to give a shout out to independent publishers. Rainy Day Bookstore is my local bookstore, and they're the ones that actually took this product to Peter Workman and introduced it to him, and that's how it got published with Workman. My local bookstore owner, Vivian Jennings, called it Peter Workman, and so there you have it.
Well, thank you, Vivian. We love independent bookstores. If you're if you pick up the phone, give your little local indie shop a call and say, hey, do you have the Indestructibles? No, can you order it from Workman Press? It'll be there in a couple of days. Yeah. We've had a great time speaking to the author, the founder, the creative genius behind the Indestructibles, Amy Pixton. Hey, Amy, thank you so very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Jed. I had a lot of fun.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're really excited to welcome the Space Gal back to the podcast. Emily Calandrelli. She's the star of Emily's Wonder Lab, a great series on Netflix. She's the author of the Ada Lace series. And she's here to celebrate the fact that the Ada Lace series is now available as a box set. That's the next episode of the podcast. Hey, if you are the author of a fantastic children's book, whether you have one book or 30 books or 300 books, we want you to go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page. Find out all the different ways that the Reading with Your Kids podcast can help you promote your great book. You can be a guest on the show. You can submit your book to our panel of certified great read deciders. We can also help you get your book promoted on a nationwide network of pedestrian billboards. Really, really powerful stuff. Check it all out today at readingwithyourkids.com. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, want to start by thanking our guest, Amy Pixton. What a story. The Indestructibles, over 7 million sold. Hard to believe. Also want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan, Michael Murphy, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to join together to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.